Chapter 1. The coffee lady Lucia wasn't someone who stood out in a crowd. Petite and grey-haired, she was the very definition of invisible to most who came into the little corner cafe. Her eyes, soft and ever watchful, followed the movement of people coming and going, but rarely did anyone look at her for more than a few fleeting seconds. Most of the time, customers walked in and out without even noticing her, a figure that blended seamlessly into the cozy, modest space of the shop. The cafe itself wasn't fancy, but it had a warm, welcoming atmosphere. The wooden tables, worn by time, and the ever-present scent of fresh coffee in the air gave the place a sense of comfort, like a small refuge from the world outside. The constant hum of conversation and laughter mingled with the sound of coffee being brewed, and at the heart of it all was Lucia. She didn't wear a flashy uniform or expensive jewelry. Her simple dress and stained fabric apron were enough to mark her presence, but also allowed her to vanish into the scene like just another part of the backdrop. Her work, humble as it was done with quiet dedication. Lucia didn't mind if no one acknowledged her or appreciated what she did. For her, just doing her job well, offering others a warm pause in their day, was more than enough. When she made coffee, there was a gentleness in her hands, a touch of care that few ever noticed. The foam of the milk, the drops of coffee hitting the bottom of the cup, the hiss of steam, everything was done with a calmness that reflected the heart of the one preparing it. She knew that for many, those brief moments in the cafe might be the only peace they'd get in an otherwise chaotic day. Among the regulars was Mr. Ricardo. He was a successful businessman, always in a hurry, always rushing somewhere. His perfectly tailored suit and expensive watch made it clear that he was constantly on the move, chasing the next big deal. He would sit in the corner seat by the window and place his order with a quick, almost mechanical gesture, as if the coffee was just another item on his to-do list rather than a moment to enjoy. Ricardo rarely spoke. He would walk in, order, pay, and leave, all within 10 minutes. And Lucia was always there, taking his order with the same calm expression and the same gentle smile. He never really noticed her. Ricardo always seemed to be wrapped up in his own world, a world where Lucia didn't exist. He never saw the effort she put into making each cup with the care of someone who truly gave a damn. He never noticed the patience in her smile, even on the long, exhausting days when the rhythm of clinking cups never slowed down. He didn't see how her hands, rough from years of labor, worked tirelessly to make the cafe feel warm, not just for customers, but for the co-workers who shared that space. But Lucia didn't mind. She understood that people had their own lives, their own struggles. She didn't judge, and she didn't expect more than the bare minimum of respect. She was there doing her job, and that was what mattered. Still, even in her quiet acceptance, there was a soft sadness in her heart. She knew most people saw nothing more than just another worker behind the counter, and that kind of quiet loneliness, the kind no one talks about, lingered in her like a subtle ache. She didn't need recognition to keep going. But the silence, the invisible disregard, touched something deeper than she liked to admit. People walked past her without a glance. Or if they looked, it was impersonal, transactional. She had become part of the furniture, like the coffee machine or the chairs around the tables. But there was something Lucia understood better than most: human connection. She knew that behind those hurried faces and hollow conversations were complex lives, stories she'd never get to hear, and maybe that was what kept her going, even on the hardest days. She wanted to believe that in some small way she was touching someone's life, even if they never realized it. On an ordinary day, Mr. Ricardo walked into the cafe, just like always, rushing. He didn't look at Lucia. He went straight to the counter, placed his usual order. Lucia made the coffee with her usual care, but something about that day felt different. Maybe it was the sadness she felt then, the quiet longing to be seen, really seen. She wasn't hoping for public praise or compliments. She just wanted someone, anyone, to notice the value in what she did, the effort she put into making that. Small space, more than just a coffee stop, a place that felt like home. As she was preparing his drink, a small piece of paper slipped from Ricardo's table. He didn't notice, his mind already elsewhere. Lucia bent down instinctively to pick it up. When she stood up, their eyes met for the briefest moment. Just a second, barely enough to register, but Lucia felt it. Ricardo's gaze flickered, almost startled, as if, for just that instant, he actually saw her. There was something in his expression, something confused, maybe even curious, and then it was gone. He looked away and hurried out the door. The cafe returned to its usual quiet hum, but Lucia still felt that look lingering in her thoughts. Something had shifted, something she couldn't quite name, but it settled in her chest like a flicker of hope. Maybe, she thought, things could be different. Maybe one day someone would truly see her. Maybe someone would understand what her quiet effort really meant. But for now, she just smiled and went back to making coffee. Just like she always did. Not because she expected anything in return, but because it was her way of being in their world. Overlooked, invisible, but still essential. She believed that one day the world might finally see the worth she had always known was there. Chapter 2. The Silent Judgment. In the days that followed, Lucia sensed that something had changed. Not within herself, but in the way she noticed others. Every customer who walked into the cafe, every small gesture she made, it all felt more intense now. That brief exchange of glances with Ricardo, though wordless, had left a mark on her. Still, reality remained the same. That morning, Clara, a college student who stopped by every day before class, rushed into the cafe, phone in hand, furiously typing out a message as she entered. Clara was always in a hurry, always distracted, and rarely made eye contact with Lucia when placing her order. Lucia knew exactly what that meant. Clara was the kind of customer who would never understand the importance of small details. The way she spoke, the way her eyes stayed glued to her phone while ordering, everything about her said the cafe was just another checkbox on her daily to-do list. She wasn't a bad person, but her indifference to those around her made her distant, someone who rarely saw beyond her own world. Lucia prepared the coffee with the same care she always did. But as she handed Clara the cup, a quiet sting struck her chest. The rushed, impersonal thank you felt like a silent blow. It wasn't an insult, not directly, but it carried an unmistakable message of indifference. Clara didn't even glance up from her phone. Like so many other times, Lucia's effort was dismissed as something trivial, something forgettable. And that hurt more than she cared to admit. With each passing day, she could feel how distant people had become. Everyone was so wrapped up in their own lives, in their routines, they barely noticed the human beings around them. They saw people only as tools to get through the day, as means to an end. Clara was physically there, but her mind was somewhere else, lost in the whirlwind of worries and distractions that made up her own carefully curated universe. Clara's empty gaze, to Lucia, was a reflection of something far bigger. It wasn't just Clara, it was the whole world. A world where people were too busy, too self-absorbed to notice the needs of others. Lucia didn't resent Clara's indifference. She understood it. She knew everyone was fighting their own battles, but that quiet neglect, that absence of recognition, it still cut deep. She looked at Clara one more time before returning to her work, and in that moment, Lucia realized something important. The people who truly saw her, who genuinely respected her, were few, but they were there. Anna and Julia, two co-workers who worked alongside her in the cafe, always treated her with a kindness that had become increasingly rare. They saw Lucia, and in return, she saw something in them that made them different from everyone else. Anna, a young woman with honest eyes and a warm smile, always asked how Lucia was doing. Julia, more reserved but quietly empathetic, was always quick to help. When things got hectic, neither needed grand words to show they valued Lucia. Their relationship with the quiet barista was something deeper, unspoken, but real. Though the rest of the world seemed to overlook her, Lucia felt that in some small but meaningful way she was seen by these two. And maybe that was enough. She didn't need validation from everyone, just a few who could truly recognize the essence of what mattered. Chapter 3. The Unexpected Encounter. It was a cold morning, and the wind whipped through the streets with a force strong enough to make even the most hurried slow down for a moment. Lucia was behind the counter, cleaning the coffee machine, just like she did every day. The scent of fresh coffee filled the air, and the cafe was, as usual, cozy and calm. She knew it would be a long day, but she didn't mind. She was patient, and there was something comforting about the routine. Then the door opened and Ricardo walked in. But unlike his usual rushed self, he seemed different. His face was marked by an expression of exhaustion and worry. He wasn't in a hurry. He stepped inside and looked around, as if he were searching for something or someone. When his eyes finally settled on Lucia, she noticed he wasn't just seeing her. He was observing her with an intense, strange look, like he was trying to find something in her face. He walked up to the counter without his usual rushed posture, and instead of ordering his usual coffee, he spoke in a softer, almost broken voice. "Lucia, do you have a moment? I need to talk to you." Lucia's surprise was visible. Ricardo, that always busy, indifferent businessman, was standing there, asking for her attention. He who had never said more than the necessary to her, now seemed to be looking for something more. She gave him a cautious smile and nodded. "Of course, Mr. Ricardo. What can I do for you?" He glanced around as if to make sure no one else could hear him, and then hesitantly began to speak. I don't know who else to turn to. My company, it's on the verge of bankruptcy. I made some mistakes in business, and now I'm trying to find a way to save everything. I don't know what to do anymore." Lucia didn't say a word. She just listened. She was used to hearing people talk about their problems, but something about him was different. He didn't seem like the arrogant, confident man she saw every day. The vulnerability was clear, and he wasn't trying to hide it. "I didn't expect to talk about this with anyone, especially not you, but somehow you make me feel calm in a way no one else does. I know it might sound strange, but do you have any idea what I could do? I don't even know what to think anymore." Lucia looked into his eyes. There was no judgment, no rush, just a quiet space for him to open up. She had never cared much about Ricardo's big business dealings, but in that moment she realized he was just another man lost in his own personal war. He wasn't asking for money or business advice. He was asking for someone to listen, someone who wouldn't judge him. "Sometimes we just need to stop and look at things clearly. You're so focused on saving the company that you've forgotten to look at what really matters," Lucia said, with a calmness that came from life experience. She knew that more than business, what he needed was to find his own peace. He looked at her, surprised. He never would have imagined that a simple employee, a woman who served coffee every day, could offer him that kind of clarity. But there was something about her that made him feel calmer, more capable of facing the situation. He didn't know what it was, but something made him want to listen to her. "You're right," he said, almost in a sigh. "I've gotten so lost in all this mess, I didn't even realize." Lucia listened for a few more minutes, but she knew the biggest help he needed wasn't financial advice. It was someone to help him reconnect with his own humanity, his sense of purpose. When he finished talking, she gave him a simple smile. I don't have the answers for you, Ricardo, but I do know that sometimes we find solutions when we're finally able to see things clearly. Maybe by slowing down and focusing on what truly matters, you'll find your way." He stayed silent for a moment, taking in her words. Then he looked at her with gratitude in his eyes, something Lucia never expected to see. "You're incredible, Lucia. You know that I had no idea you had so much to offer." Lucia smiled but said nothing. She knew that sometimes words weren't necessary. She had done what she did best. She listened. And in that moment something changed. Ricardo was no longer the rushed, impersonal client. He was a man in crisis, searching for answers. And somehow he had found part of that answer in the most unlikely place, in a simple cafe worker. Chapter 4. Revelations and Truths days passed, and for Lucia the cafe remained a place of routine. But something in her heart had shifted, just as something also seemed to have changed in Ricardo. Though he continued to visit the cafe, he now stayed longer, sometimes even chatting with her. And with each conversation, Lucia felt he was lighter, more open, as if he had begun shedding a hard layer of his personality, the one he wore like armor. That day, Ricardo walked through the door, but this time his expression was different. He looked anxious, yet there was a peace in his eyes that Lucia hadn't seen before. He walked up to the counter, but instead of just ordering his coffee, he looked straight at Lucia and said, "Lucia, can I ask you for a favor? I need your help once again." Without hesitation, Lucia gestured for him to sit. She looked at him with understanding, as if she already knew he was about to share something important. "Of course. What's going on?" Ricardo hesitated. For a moment, his fingers nervously tapping on the table. He seemed to be struggling with the words, like admitting what he was about to say was harder than he expected. Well, I'm not just a businessman. I also own one of the biggest jewelry stores in the city. And no one knows that. No one here at the cafe. You didn't know either, right?" Lucia was surprised, but her expression didn't change. She simply kept looking at him, waiting for him to explain further. "I disguise myself as just another ordinary businessman, someone without obvious wealth, to better understand the people around me. To see how they treat me when they don't know who I am. When people don't know what I have or what I'm capable of, they tend to be more honest. It helps me see who people truly are, without the masks we all wear." Lucia watched him closely. He was sitting there in front of her, admitting something she never would have guessed. The cafe, the simple employee he had barely noticed before, the place he once thought unremarkable, was now immersed in a truth he had kept hidden for so long. "But what does that have to do with me?" Lucia asked calmly. Ricardo took a deep breath. His eyes now locked on hers. He looked vulnerable, more than ever before. "I watched you, Lucia. I saw how you treated people here, how much you cared about every cup, every word. I realized you're different from everyone else. You never asked for anything in return, and now I understand that you deserve more than this. I wanted you to know who I really am, because I realized that despite everything I own, my true worth doesn't come from what I have. It comes from how we treat the people around us." Lucia remained silent for a few moments, processing his words. What he was saying felt huge, but she still needed to understand it more fully. "So, you were watching me?" Lucia asked. Not hiding her surprise, Ricardo nodded. "Yes, I saw how you took care of people, how you treated them with respect, no matter who they were or what they did. I saw how generous you were with your time, how you always gave your best, even when no one was watching. And that, Lucia, is more valuable than any business, any jewel, or any wealth I could ever have. And that's why I'm here now. I want to do something for you, something beyond anything you ever expected." Lucia felt a mix of emotions. She had always believed a person's true worth wasn't in their appearance or bank account. But hearing that from Ricardo, someone who had everything she never did, hit her differently. She hadn't expected him to see her that way. She hadn't imagined that, through all those conversations, he had noticed her kindness. "I just do what I believe is right," Lucia replied, in her usual calm tone. "I don't do anything expecting something in return." Ricardo smiled, but this time it was a genuine smile. He looked lighter. "You deserve to be recognized, Lucia, and that's why I want to invite you to an important meeting. I want you to come to my jewelry store, not as a simple cafe worker, but as someone who can bring so much more to my company. I want you to be part of something bigger. You have an immeasurable value, Lucia, and I want you to see that too." His words hung in the air, heavy, yet full of a sincerity that left Lucia speechless. The offer seemed absurd, yet a part of her knew this was the beginning of something big. Something she never imagined would happen. She looked at him deeply, trying to make sense of what was unfolding. But Ricardo's honest smile said it all. She didn't need more words. Something had changed in that moment, and Lucia knew that the future, however uncertain, would never be the same again. Chapter 5. The big turnaround, Ricardo's invitation to visit the jewelry store, felt unlikely, but Lucia accepted. It wasn't out of vanity or curiosity about the luxury and wealth he possessed. It was because she sensed that this moment marked a turning point. She didn't know exactly what to expect, but whatever it was, she was ready to open herself up to whatever life had in store. On the appointed morning, Lucia stepped into the jewelry store, and the contrast to the coffee shop was instantly apparent. The walls were decorated with stained glass, and the displays showcased diamonds and pearls that sparkled almost unrealistically. It was a place of sophistication, power, and even a touch of ostentation. Ricardo was waiting in his private office, and when he saw her walk in, he greeted her with a genuine smile. "Lucia, thank you for coming," he said, standing up to greet her. "I know this place is very different from your daily life, but believe me, your presence here means more than you can imagine." Lucia smiled, trying not to feel out of place. She wasn't there to judge the setting, but to understand what he wanted from her. "I never imagined I'd be in a place like this," she replied, feeling slightly uneasy, but trying to keep her composure. Ricardo motioned toward a chair, but before she sat down, he spoke again. "I've been observing you for a long time, Lucia, and what impressed me most wasn't just your kindness or your impeccable manners. It was your ability to see what others can't. What you do every day at the coffee shop is something very few people can do. You understand the essence of people in a way that's rare. You notice what they truly need, even when they don't say a word." Lucia sat down and looked at him, trying to make sense of his words. She had always had a knack for reading people, but she had never thought of it as something remarkable. "I don't know what you expect from me, Ricardo. I'm just a simple coffee shop worker. I don't know anything about jewelry or business. I'm just someone who tries to do the right thing every day." Ricardo smiled, though there was a seriousness in his eyes. "That's exactly why I brought you here. I need someone like you, someone who sees beyond appearances. I need someone to help me rethink the way we run this store, to reshape how we treat our customers, and even how we conduct our business. I'm good with numbers, with sales, with profit, but somewhere along the way, I lost sight of the human side behind the money. And you, Lucia, you have that vision. I want you to be my partner here, not just an employee, but a true partner. Someone who can help me transform this into something more human, more welcoming, more real." Lucia was stunned. He wasn't just asking her to help with the business. He was offering her a real opportunity to be part of something bigger. She, who had always been invisible to others, was now being seen, truly seen, for who she was. You're asking me to?" Be your partner? She asked, barely believing it. Ricardo nodded, his expression sincere and full of confidence. Yes, Lucia. I need someone like you, someone who understands the human side of our customers, who values kindness and respect. Together, we can create something that's more than just a jewelry store, a place where people feel seen, valued, respected, a place where it's not about what's in your wallet, but what's in your heart. Lucia felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She had never imagined that the humility she carried, the generosity she offered every day, could lead her to a place like this. It felt as if the world had shifted, as if everything had suddenly changed. What once seemed like a simple job in a coffee shop had become a chance to change lives. I don't know what to say, she whispered, her eyes welling up. I always thought my worth was in the small things, the everyday gestures. I never imagined that could lead me to something this big. Ricardo smiled, admiration gleaming in his eyes. Lucia, your worth has always been in the small things, the everyday gestures. And that's what makes you so special. You saw something in me that I couldn't even see in myself. And that, more than anything, is what this world needs. People who don't just look, but who truly see what's beneath the surface. Lucia glanced around at the shimmer of the jewels, at the luxury that once felt so far from her reality. But in that moment, she understood that true wealth wasn't in gold or precious stones. It was in kindness, in respect, in the ability to see the value in people. She looked at Ricardo and smiled, with a new understanding, a new outlook on life. What she had of greatest value wasn't what she owned, but who she was. I accept, Lucia said at last. And I hope that together we can build something worth more than jewels and riches, something that lasts forever. And so, a new chapter began for Lucia and Ricardo. Together, they transformed the jewelry store into a place where people were treated with dignity, where human value came above all else. And along the way, Lucia showed everyone that the real treasure wasn't in precious stones, but in human connection, in the ability to see beyond appearances, and in the power of generosity. A simple woman, dressed in a cleaner's uniform, and walking silently, moves among the glittering display cases of one of the city's largest jewelry stores. Ignored by many, judged by others, she watches, quietly, every gesture, every word. But behind that humble appearance lies a powerful secret no one could ever imagine.